We just wanted to give you guys a little bit more time to chat with friends and have a little bit more community. That's what we're going with, at least. Sorry for the delay here, but we're so excited that you're here, and trust us, it is worth the wait. We are so excited. At POUR, our mission is to create inclusive community where women can be poured into, pursue their purpose, and navigate life's challenges, all in Christ's name. We are so excited that you're here, whether you are watching in a viewing party or solo. If you're in Atlanta or you're in a different city, we are so pumped. And that's been one of the really bright sides of this circumstance that we're in, is that we get to reach more people than we ever thought we would. And we want to see how you're joining us tonight. I mean, this is a community. We want to see what you're doing. So send us some photos on Instagram, pourcommunity.atl, and we want to see what you're doing to join us tonight.
Thank you, Brantley, and thank y'all for spending your Tuesday night with us. We're so excited that you're joining us. We're having another question and answer segment of the talk. So throughout the entire talk from Allison and Katie, please go to our POUR Instagram page and please submit your question. We're so excited to answer them. And last but not least, we're so excited to have our guest prayer speaker, Kelsey Bilthouse, who's going to pray over tonight, as well as share a little bit about her story. So we're so excited to have her.
Thank you, Fraser. I am just so humbled to be here tonight. And first things first, if we could all just take a minute and bow our heads in prayer. So, Heavenly Father, just thank you. Thank you for bringing us all together tonight, whether it be virtually or in person, wherever all of these amazing women may be, Lord. We just thank you for this community. I thank you for Fraser and Katie and Brantley for creating this fellowship and really hearing your calling and being those good and faithful servants, Lord, for creating just this community of women who are so strong. We're so grateful, Lord. And thank you for Allison for being here tonight. We are so excited to hear a little bit about her story and her journey with you, Lord. And let us just open up our hearts tonight and worship, Lord, and fellowship. In your name I pray, amen. Okay. So I am so excited to share a little bit about my story with you all. When I thought about my message and really what I wanted to say, it really came down to the power of prayer. So a little bit about me. I've always kind of just grown up in the church, come from a very Christian family. But I think my faith was really tested at the end of last year when my mom got into an accident. For those that don't know me, which is probably a lot of you because I'm not sure who's tuning in, I was on the way to the lake last year with my fiance in November when I received a text message from my father that said, "Hey, Mom got into a scooter accident. We're at Grady now." And for those that don't know, Grady is the trauma hospital here in Atlanta. Which, first off, Dad, I don't know who texted that, but I called him immediately and said, "Is everything okay?" And he said, "I think it's just a concussion. Keep going to the lake. She's probably fine." So we kept driving, and for some reason, it just didn't feel right to me. And I looked at Brian, and I was like, "I think we need to go back. I think I need to go be with my mom at Grady." And he looked at me, and he was like, "No, we're still going to the lake. It's fine. Your dad said it's fine." So my voice got much louder and louder, and thankfully, he turned the car around, and we headed back to Atlanta. And in the car, something just still didn't sit right with me, and I just felt like, something is wrong. So I started texting a few of my friends and my Bible study and just asked for a quick prayer. I just said, "Hey, my mom got injured, and just a quick prayer. I'm sure she's fine." We ended up getting to Grady and quickly came to realize that it wasn't just a concussion. And I think that was when I really first saw God in this journey, is that he was really in that car with me that night and said, "You need to be back at that hospital with your dad and with your mom." Because what we found out was that the concussion was actually a horrible brain bleed, and she was suffering from a traumatic brain injury. And so then the doctor said, "Hey, the next 48 hours are pretty critical here." He said, "This is very life-threatening, and, you just need to prepare yourselves." And for me in that moment, I thought, what would my mom do? She is so godly and so faithful. And I was like, what would she do? And she always talked about these prayer warriors. And I was like, I'm going to call on the prayer warriors. That's what I'm going to do. That's what she would do. That's what I'm going to do. So I posted a message on Facebook and on Instagram. And within a matter of seconds, at like 1 a.m. on a Friday night, my phone was blowing up with people just saying, "Hey, I'm praying for you. I'm with you." People I haven't talked to in years, I didn't even know were believers. And it was in that moment that I knew we were going to be okay, because I knew we had God on our side, and we had all of these people. It was like I created this army of worshipers that were on our team. Fast forward, and she made it through those 48 hours. We actually got her into the Shepherd Center, which is a great brain rehab center here in Atlanta. And she was there for about 3 months. And one thing I always like to share about her time there and about this journey is kind of myself finding the word of the Bible. I had never really been a Bible reader, if you want to call it that. I always read Jesus Calling or devotion, but I never really opened up the Bible and read scripture. And during those 3 months, and still now, there's something about opening it up and finding his word that was so powerful to me, that just gave me so much strength to get through the hard days. So at Shepherd, at the end of our stay there, the doctors had sat my dad and I down and said, there's not much more we can do for her. She's a hard case, one of the hardest they had actually seen, they told us, which is great news. Because she looked totally fine, wasn't in a wheelchair, no physical impairments or anything like that. But mentally, her personality was just totally off. It was just not the mom that I had known. So they told us that we were going to have to send her to this other facility. And unfortunately, this facility was not as nice as Shepherd. It was not very aesthetically pleasing. It's really not a place you would ever want to send one of your loved ones. But at the end of the day, we asked everyone to pray with us about it, and we ended up sending her there. The weird thing about this place is that you can't talk to or even go visit your loved one for the first 14 days. But thankfully, my mother was very sneaky and had a way of stealing her phone from the nurses. She tricked them as part of that personality thing. And we got a phone call from her after about 5 days, and she just sounded normal again. She just sounded like she was kind of back, and she was my mom. And my dad and I were like, this is weird. This is too good to be true. And we broke the rules, and we went and saw her on day 5, and she looked normal again. We're like, what is going on? And the doctors just looked at us, and they couldn't explain it. Long story short, we ended up bringing her home on day 11 of her being there, not even the 14 days. And since then, she's been home since January now, and she's back at work, and she's traveling, and she's not only playing tennis, but she's beating me in tennis. I mean, things that these doctors said wouldn't happen for years, if not ever. And they still can't even explain it. And every time they ask me, I say, listen, I know what happened. God happened. He happened. He answered our prayers. We had these prayer warriors, and I trusted him the whole time and never let my faith get me down, and I believed. And I think that if there's anything that I can share with you as far as my story, especially in this weird pandemic world that we're living in, this isn't the 2020 we asked for, and I know it's definitely hard. Maybe you've lost your job, or you're replanning your wedding, or your wedding doesn't look like what you wanted it to, or mental health is super low. I think there's one thing that's always stable, and that is God, and that is the word. So I hope that my story can give you a little bit of hope and faith, especially this year. And I just really thank everyone for letting me share it with you.
Thank you, Kelsey. It was awesome. We so appreciate you sharing, and what a great way to start our third pour. And gosh, this is just such a special one. Sitting right over here is one of my favorite people that I've gotten to meet. It has been definitely a different year, but 2020 brought me Allison Dukes, and now she's here with all of you. So welcome, Allison.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I wish the room was filled with all your fun faces, but I'm really excited to be here.
We'll try to make it just as fun with the two of us up here and all the smiling faces sitting out here helping us run it, all 4 or so of them. Small group. But I'm going to glance at my notes because Allison has a breadth of experience and responsibilities that I couldn't even possibly remember if I tried to not read them. So I'm going to quickly tell you a little bit about her. Not all the things, don't want to embarrass her. But then turn it over to her and let her share a little bit of her story with you. So Allison, really, I think when we were getting together to talk about this the first time, described herself the best to me. She said she was a Christian executive working mom, which I love and think is just so spot on. But more specifically, she is currently the senior managing director and CFO of Invesco here in Atlanta, which is an independent investment management firm. She leads, to try and simplify that for those of us who don't run in that world on a daily basis. She leads all global corporate finance functions. We were chatting when she got here about how she's been on the phone with Hong Kong and London and all over the world, so she gets to do kind of all of it. And before joining Invesco earlier this year, she was the CFO at SunTrust, where she led, if everyone remembers this big news, the structuring of the merger between SunTrust and BB&T, now into Truist, which is incredible. So those are pretty big 8 to 5 responsibilities. And then on top of that, she is a devoted and loving wife, mom of 2 boys, 11 and 13, and is incredibly involved out in the Atlanta community with a bunch of different nonprofits. And I have bragged on her for probably far too long. But you needed to know all of those things because they're incredible. So we are so excited to have her here and can't wait to get into this talk with you. Allison, since our audience is largely lots of 20 and 30-year-old women, I think there are so many things about your story that they can relate to, but maybe you can just kind of start to run us through that season of your life.
Yeah, when I first met Katie and I was introduced to you, last fall, and I got a call of there's some young women, they want to start a ministry, they'd love to talk to you, and I said, sure. I mean, I absolutely, I'm not going to say no and let me learn more. And Katie said, well, we're really focused on women in their 20s and 30s and all the life that happens in your 20s and 30s and really thinking about your career and your family and marriage and making sure that it's centered around Christ. And we also want to pour wine while we're doing that. And I was like, yes.
All of those things.
All of those things. Like, you just checked every single one of like my passions. And so I was so excited and honored to be asked to come speak. So yeah, my 20s, I call them the wilderness years. That was a hard decade for me. And so when I think about where a lot of you are in your life and sort of what you're working through, I can't help but reflect on my own season of life then. And I grew up in Atlanta and had been here most of my life, went to college at Vanderbilt, and my parents divorced when I was really young, and I was the only child of their marriage. And they told me on Christmas Day, which like gives you some idea of how bad the marriage and the trouble must have been. And I was only 5, but you don't forget those things. Like, it actually, it implants in you, I think, a sense of sort of responsibility, for better or worse. So all of a sudden I took on this sort of life of I've got to be self-sufficient in every way, and I have to lead, and I got to take care of things, and I got to take care of other people. I should depend on no one. And
as a 5-year-old,
I can look back and really think about all like it shaped the way I am, which actually leads into faith later. In any event, I came back to Atlanta after college, and I started right at SunTrust, right out of school, and I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing and tracking through life like you do. Like, you all graduate from high school together, and then you go to college, and you're all sophomores and then juniors, and you just sort of do life together, and then you all get jobs. And then in your 20s, everybody starts to go in different directions. And I remember sort of looking around as I was trying to get my feet underneath me with a career and dating and where I wanted to live and just who I wanted to be. And it looked like everybody else was sort of taking off like a rocket ship and, making really big life choices and kind of finding their place in life. And I just remember those years. I had fun, by the way. It wasn't like a miserable decade. I had a lot of fun, but
just wondering.
I just couldn't kind of figure it out. And I had like 3 3-year relationships in a row. I mean, it was like I was dating on paper what looked like great guys, right? I mean, they were like, I was doing again what everybody would expect me to be doing. And every time I would get towards the end of that season, it was like, I just don't think this is right. I don't think this is it. And I need to make a change. And after my first couple of years out of college in Atlanta, it was probably 2.5, 3 years. I just decided I was going to move to New York. I was going to resign on Monday, and I let my boyfriend of 2.5 years know that weekend that
just updated him.
I think I'm going to resign on Monday, and I'm going to move to New York in 2 weeks. And also, by the way, I went in on Monday and resigned to who is now your boss. He was my boss at the time.
My boss at my current job, who might even be watching, is actually the one who introduced me to Allison, which is incredible. And he was Allison's boss back in the day, in the early days at SunTrust.
And so so I just walked in on a Monday and was like, I'm going to be gone in 2 weeks. And I mean, it was like, everybody was looking at me like, why? What are you doing? Including the boyfriend. And I just was like, I don't know. It's time to move to New York. I went and moved on my best friend from high school sofa bed and lived in her studio apartment on the sofa bed, did a whole new job, like just kind of like said, all right, like new sweater, like that sweater's done. I'm putting on a new sweater.
And this was this around 25?
I was probably 25.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was great. And a lot of my college friends ended up moving, and it was a really fun season. And then I find myself in another big long-term relationship. And again, I just kept kind of finding myself in these positions of, this is good, but I don't think this is great. I don't think this is what has been promised for me. And I really became a Christian in college. I grew up in the church, but I didn't really know faith. I didn't understand grace until my junior year of college. And I read Romans, and it was like my mind just exploded. Like all the ways in which Paul just came alive in his faith, and he really understood grace. Like it all clicked for me. But in those years, in my 20s, I knew God, and but I didn't have a relationship with Jesus, really. I was trying, but I couldn't quite figure it out.
Sort of a part of your life rather than so central to it. Would that be a good way of saying it?
Yep, absolutely.
A piece of you.
Yeah, it was a piece of me, but it wouldn't have been the first way I would have defined myself at all. And I was fortunate enough to find an amazing church when I lived in New York. Tim Keller, who was the pastor of Redeemer Church at the time, which was relatively small back then, and was just incredible and spoke into my life in a way that I was like, yes, that is making sense to me. And so I found myself over those years where God was just knocking on my heart. You know, he was pulling at me in different ways. And I think those decisions that I was making of that doesn't feel right was him building a hedge of protection around me and keeping me from doing what might have been comfortable or might have been expected, because he had a different promise in store for me.
I love that.
And yeah, Christine Kane posted something the other day. She's a great follow if you don't follow her on Instagram. Amazing pastor with Hillsong. But
And a great accent.
Yes, Australian. She
Great
said,
Australian accent.
don't miss what God has for you by chasing what was never meant for you. Don't miss what God has for you by chasing what was never meant for you. And if I could kind of sum up my 20s, I did a lot of chasing what was never meant for me. And by truly the grace of God, he kept me from making, decisions. He would snatch me back from the jaws of that decision, recognizing, he had something else in store for me.
Yeah. I think that's so relatable too, especially to this audience. One, you've spoken about all these, in a lot of ways you got right out of school and you had it. You had all the things that might stack up and say, okay, I'm making it. My life is going in the right direction.
Great job,
and
good
still
boyfriend,
all of it. Still you felt something stirring. And then a big move like that is a huge adjustment, letting go and shedding all the things that you had really made a comfort out of to go all the way up to New York. And then one of my favorite things that I've heard you talk about is you were in New York around our age during 9/11, which most of us were, younger, or maybe we remember pieces of it, but you lived it and you experienced it, and you were at Tim Keller's church in that season, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, I lived in the West Village and I worked in Soho, and on 9/11, I was on my way walking to work downtown, and it's just one of those things where I remember what I was wearing. I remember how blue the sky was. I remember the temperature. I remember waking up that morning so excited. I was, let's see, how old am I now? I'm almost 46, so I think it was 27. Is that right? Okay, I have to think.
You're the math person. I'm just the conversationalist.
Runs together. So I'd made plans to meet friends after work. We were going to I think we were going to meet in Bryant Park. And it was just one of those beautiful fall Tuesdays in New York.
Yeah.
And it was the promise of life. Like, you had everything. And just the excitement I felt of, this is going to be a great day. I really do vividly remember all of it. Anyways, walking to work, everything you have seen on images I was seeing up close, and it was horrifying. And your brain doesn't really process what you're seeing, and you can't really even comprehend what's happening. I remember when after both planes had hit, and we're just standing on the street in the fires, and people are jumping, and all of a sudden these F-16s come buzzing overhead, and everybody started screaming and running on the streets because we thought we were under attack. We thought it was some
I can't imagine.
enemy attack, not recognizing they were U.S. military planes coming in to protect the city from whatever was coming next. And just that feeling of like, what's happening, I just want to rewind an hour. And that moment, much like when you get a phone call from a parent of a tragic accident, right? Of like, there's life before and there's life after. And it was one of those days. And what made it unique was it wasn't just my life before and my life after. It was this sort of corporate tragedy we were all in. This I thought it was just the city. I didn't even really comprehend at the time that the whole country was watching and the whole world was watching. But the grieving and the suffering isn't just yours, it's everyone around you. And it was just one of those times, and I have thought about it a lot this year because I do see parallels, right? It wasn't, 2020 is not this like stark moment of just sheer evil and terror, which is what that was. This is just this like long, slow bleed of a marathon we're all in, where we can look at
multifaceted pain
for so many reasons in so many different ways. And there's like life before, and then there's life after. And we don't know what life after is. We're
Life
still
during.
in it. Yeah, we're still we're still in this place where God's kind of taking us sideways, right? We're just sort of moving sideways. I feel like day to day. I don't know that it goes back to the way it was. Nobody knows. But maybe it's better. I do know that God's getting us ready for whatever this next season is. And sometimes he is taking us sideways for a while until we fully realize the sufficiency of his grace and that nothing else really is stable. There is no other real firm foundation beyond the sufficiency of his grace. And whatever is coming next for us all, and maybe it's a mountaintop, like we hope it's a mountaintop, like we want to believe, right, 2021's got to be better than the decade that is 2020. Or maybe it's more challenging, but whatever it is, I really truly believe we are in this season for a reason. And he is reminding us of the sufficiency of his grace. And that is truly the only thing that we do need.
Absolutely. It's so important. And you and I have talked a good bit about the importance of community, the importance of relationships. And I think drawing back on some of your, like, connecting to the way that you dated in your 20s and what you found yourself looking for. It was almost like you had cereal, milk, and a spoon in every relationship, but you didn't have a bowl. And if you don't have a bowl, then you can't really, that's just not going to work. And I want you to share as much of this as you'd be willing to. I love the way that you talk about your husband and the way that you talk about how you sort of were prepared for the significance of faith in a partnership, in a marriage, and how you met him. So I don't know if Billy's watching or not, but if so, I hope he gets to hear himself be bragged on a little.
He may be. He has a way. He will actually call in and listen to my earnings calls sometimes. I'm like, did you understand?
Just
like,
for
you
fun?
follow any of that stuff that I'm talking about? And he's like, you sounded great. Like, that's so nice of you. Because it's really boring to listen to an earnings call. Let me just tell you, if you are
That doesn't sound fun.
not an investor, it really sounds boring. But so I left New York. Wait, before I left New York, I have to share this because I think I want to make sure we walk away with a few scriptures, just the way we started tonight.
Absolutely.
With scripture is where we find truth, and not my words. The truth is already written for us. And I started in those years really hanging on to one scripture in a season of life. And in that season, it was Matthew 11:28 through 30. And I would say this one over and over and over to myself. And of course, I've come back to it a lot this year. Come to me, all ye who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke and learn from me, For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And I just think that is one of my favorite scriptures, because the idea that we can just trade yokes with Jesus, that he will take my heavy one and he will give me his light one, is it's what brings me to my knees. And it is where we can truly find peace and rest, and just with open hands pray back to him and thank him for the fact that he will give us that light burden and take my heavy one and carry it. And how often do we need to just be reminded of that? And as that child who tried to grow up and be totally self-sufficient, that one was for me in my 20s. I think that turning point in my life where I started to realize I don't have to do it all. He has done it all, and it's not on me. He'll carry it for me.
Now you're wise. You got it all figured out. You're entering your 30s.
I'm getting into my 30s, and like that's actually starting to sink in. I come back to Atlanta. I come back to SunTrust.
They took you back.
They took me back, and as I started back in a different area there, and I started working in the investment bank, I mean, it just clicked. I started to really figure out this is what I love doing. I mean, all the
That is so encouraging.
professional side of my life.
Hear that loud and clear. She was in her 30s. We've already gone through this woman's resume briefly.
28, 29.
Late 20s.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, I'm like, I like this. I'm good at this. And I mean, I won't bore you with what it was, because everybody else would think it's miserably boring. But
we just might not understand, but I'm sure it's fascinating.
Those of you in finance, you would get it. So I was in syndicated finance in the bank, and it meant
They're cheering.
a lot of late nights. And I loved it. Like an easy day was maybe I'd get out of there around 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and there were a lot of midnight, 1 a.m. But I was working on a team, and I was doing deals, and I just was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like that part of my life, that foundation was starting to feel a little more solid. And I'm done with all this dating at this point. I'm like, I'm done. I just, no more dating. Everybody that would ask me out, I would cancel. I would break dates all the time. I really was like, I'm just going to die a like very happy career woman. It's okay. And I was supposed to go on a date one night, and I had figured out a way to back out of it. And I'm working some weeknight, and my best friend, who I lived on her sofa bed in New York, was in town, and somehow her flight got canceled, and she called at the office and said, I'm here, I'm stuck, we're going out to dinner. And it's like, I can't. Plus I canceled a date. That would be so wrong of me to go out to dinner, because I made up some excuse that I have to like work tonight. And I do, but and she was like, nope, we're coming to dinner. I'll pick you up. They're going to be like 5, 6, 7 people, all from high school. You'll know everybody. Anyways, go to dinner. I don't remember anybody else who was at dinner, but Billy was there. And we had known each other. We met when we were 18. We would bump into each other for the next decade. We actually have a friend's wedding photo that's taken from the balcony, and we can see we were sitting next to each other in the wedding when we were like 23. We have no recollection of each other.
Different season of life.
We made zero impression on each other until that night. And then I don't think we talked to anyone else.
Wow.
And we connected over our faith immediately, and like on every other level. And
you found the bowl.
we were married 18 months later. I mean, it was
I
really
did not
quick.
realize. Oh, wow.
And so much about it was that he really, I mean, for the first time, one, I wasn't pulling someone along in their faith. We were equally yoked in every measure. And we both just had that common foundation and knew what was most important. It was the first time I ever really felt like totally myself, completely myself with someone, that I wasn't trying to be somebody else, or I wasn't trying to make them into somebody else, because I'd done that too.
Yeah.
And there was one night early on when we were dating, and he called and said, do you want to go out to dinner? I was like, I really have to work. And he said, how about I come pick you up, and then I'll just take you back to the office at like 9 o'clock after dinner. And I was like, you would do that? Like, you don't think I'm weird? And he said, no, it's great. It's fine. As long as we can go have dinner, and then I'll drop you back off at the office. I mean, he's like, I think it's a little weird, but I'll roll with it.
He knew what he was signing up for.
He did. And so, I never looked back. There was no question there. And there had been lots of questions before.
I love that. Absolutely. And it seems like the most important ones were just led with. They were upfront. They were clear. You knew what you were looking for at that point, and it really stood out about him. And I feel like that is resounding in this next season of your life too, the stability of your shared faith, the stability of your marriage, and what you all were walking into as you journeyed through your 30s, becoming a mom, and into that season of work life, which was, no shortage of activity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I remember a lot about my 20s. My 30s are already a blur. And I'm only in my mid, maybe late 40s almost here.
Just barely.
It's a blur. We got married when we were 30, and I went straight into business school. I did the executive MBA program at Emory while I was still in this crazy investment banking gig. So there was not a lot of sleeping, and I think Billy was sort of on his own in our first couple of years, but so supportive of what I was doing and the wild ride he'd signed up for. And he was a consultant. He would travel every week. I would travel every week. We were kind of living the dual career life. And a few years after that dinner, you're going to think I'm crazy. I haven't told you this. A few years after that dinner where we first met, we're back at that same restaurant. It's gone. It was on North Highland. On a Friday night, we both just gotten back in town. That's what we would do. We would like reconnect on Fridays because we lived some crazy life of traveling and working then.
I think that's probably very relatable for a lot of people.
Yeah, I hope so. We're into a bottle of wine and catching up on the week. And I'm like, gosh, I have had indigestion for a month. What did I eat a month ago that I have felt this badly for this long? And he's like working through it with me. I'm like, why do I feel so badly? And I do like quick mental math. Oh my gosh. I think we need to stop by the drugstore and buy a pregnancy test on the way home. And fast forward, I realize I'm like 7 weeks pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
Had no idea.
Wow.
So
bit of a life change.
God has a crazy sense of humor. And we're in that same restaurant sitting in like the same table.
That's crazy.
And this all hits me, and both of us are like, whoa, that was not really the plan.
Not the plan.
It wasn't my plan. It was not my plan. And if I had been left to my own devices to plan when a good time to start a family would be, I don't know when I would have found a good time. There is no good time.
Plenty of reasons not to.
There are plenty of reasons not to. There are plenty of reasons to wait. There are plenty of reasons to push it off. I need to get that next promotion. I need to get through this. I want a maternity leave in the summer, not a winter. I don't know. I hear people say all kinds of crazy things. And I just think God he knows the right time, and his timing is perfect. And that one was not going to be something he was going to leave me to my own devices because he knew better that it would have never happened. And I'm so grateful it did. But anyways, we then had 2 boys. Yes, they're almost 11, 13. And I went right back to work. And on my first day back to work after my first maternity leave, was determined that I was going to get to California to close a deal that somehow had not closed in the 12 weeks I'd been gone. And my boss at the time said, don't go. You should probably take a day. I mean, he had 4 kids, and he was like, you should probably ease back into a couple days at work. I'm like, nope, book my flight, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to take the red eye home tonight.
Perfect.
And I've got my breast pump, and he was like, TMI,
Thank you so much.
There were no women around me, so I also felt like I had to do this to prove that it could be done.
Yeah,
and I went.
I'm sure.
And met with this client, and, turned right back around. I mean, I'm in LA.
Closed the deal?
Yes. And get on this plane to come home. I'm trying to get the breast pump through TSA.
Perfect.
Get home before I have to nurse William first thing in the morning, and then go back to work bleary-eyed. And I was like, okay, that was hard. He was right. Maybe I could ease back into this. But point is, we juggled. We just juggled for a lot of years, and still are. And it works. God makes space and time for everything he has for us in life. And he gives us superhuman, I think, energy and space for where he wants us to be.
Yeah.
And I think Sheryl Sandberg, I'm a big fan of Lean In. So if you haven't read Lean In, you should read Lean In. She says a couple of great things, but one is don't leave before you leave. Speaking to women who are thinking about, should I, can I stay with my career? Should I just go ahead and punt and leave because I want to start a family? Don't make those decisions before it's time. Just take each chapter of life one day at a time. Just walk through it and let God use you and show you what's next. Don't try to think too far ahead. Hopefully this year has shown us all that's really a poor idea, because whatever you think you're doing tomorrow, it's going to get canceled anyway. So just take it one day at a time and let him put on your heart where he wants you to be and how he wants to use you in that season. Don't overthink it. But she said it best, don't leave before you leave. And I do tell women I work with that all the time. Don't overthink this family thing.
Yeah.
Just if you want to have kids,
Find a way to do
have
it.
kids, right? And come back to work. And everybody has a life to balance. It just looks different for all of us. We're all making choices around what our priorities are and what we want to balance every day. And I do think your 30s, you start to feel that in a pretty warp speed way.
Absolutely. And I love the way too that you all have sort of this theme of choosing family in different ways. You both have incredible careers. You both have so many different priorities, but you've chosen your family really well. And I feel like the way that you've chosen to structure your home life, and then I'd love to have you talk a little bit too about the choice to switch careers this past year. Yeah. Two really, really big things.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so my 30s were very fruitful from a career standpoint, and I had been asked to do something different every 18 months or so. They would come and ask me to take on a different role, and I got to say, half of them, I was like, please, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to make a change. Like, I'm comfortable. Yeah. I'm finally getting this figured out, and everything was just sort of a stretch of, we need you to do this, we need you to do that. And so, and it was so rewarding in so many ways, and I would make the change, and I developed a lot of resilience, I will say, in going through that time frame, and figuring out that change was okay, and I may not be ready, but I could do it. And I really was growing in my career and in my responsibilities over those years, and I found myself in a fairly visible spot by the time I was probably about 40, and it was demanding, really demanding, a lot of evening stuff, a lot of travel, and
not your plan.
Not my plan. And no, none of the jobs were my plans. Everybody would say, what do you want to do next? And I'm like, I don't know. I just want to like
slow down maybe for just a second.
Yeah, I did. I'm glad I didn't. I mean, they were so much fun. I had a ball with everything I was doing, but it was becoming very challenging, and the boys were finding their way into elementary school, and their needs change. I mean, it's beyond just like basic care of they need to have naps and be fed and clothed and, you know, bathed every day. It's really like they have needs, and emotional needs and educational needs, and the time we needed to invest with them was starting to change, and it was challenging for us. And so my husband was a consultant and had the opportunity to take a sabbatical one summer, and he's like, we're gonna have a boys' summer, and I was super jealous. I'm like, oh gosh, sounds like
great.
Summer camp all summer long. This was so great for you guys. And, they had the best time. They loved having their dad around, and as school started and he was kind of reevaluating, we had some family responsibilities change, and just a parent that got sick. And then it also became really obvious that the boys were thriving with him there. I mean, they were thriving, and he was on the football field and the baseball field, and just they were all kind of living their best lives. And we looked and thought, you know, we always took a lot of pride in being this dual working family. It was a point of pride. If I actually held it, I think, a little bit as an idol. Yeah. Of like, look at us.
We're doing it all.
We're doing it.
Which is in line with a lot of the ways that you described kind of how you grew up and a lot of what you walked through. That makes sense.
We can do this. Like, no weakness is shown, right?
None.
And I had to look and really see that I think my husband and my kids were happier, and that this was maybe an opportunity to make a big change in our life. And I have to say, it takes a really strong man to stay at home and raise a family. It's still unusual. It's still not the gender roles that people they expect of us. You know, when we're out, people always look at my husband first and say, what do you do? It's just the way life is. And you have to be very confident in who you are and making that decision. And he's amazing. And he was like, heck yeah, this is great. This is going to be fun. And it's not always fun. And sometimes, you know, it's a little challenging for him being in the big text ring with all the carpool moms and him. And they're like, who wants to go out for a glass of wine? And he's like, think I'll punt. And I get the first call. Like when the nurse needs something, they call the mom first. I'm like, I'm in a meeting. Could you call my husband? I mean, we're constantly fighting that sort of every day of just like the shift of look to him for this and look to me for that.
Right.
And so we've broken some of those expectations, but we actually think it's really cool for our boys. And we talk to our boys about it all the time because they're like, our family looks a little different than any other family we know. And we're like, yeah. And that's the thing, is God doesn't assign us roles in the workplace or the family or our community based on our gender, right? He calls us into a lot of different areas where I think he can use us, and he will use the season of our lives. And we want our boys to see that, God's going to call your life in a lot of different directions. It's not the expectations that man puts upon you.
Right.
You only have one
Higher
calling. It's to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's so neat that season sort of preceded another time where you had to turn inward and really think, okay, what's important to our family? Yeah. And I really, this is maybe creepy of me, but I remember reading about Allison in the news. And when the merger finalized and she had made the decision to stay here, which I'll steal none of that thunder and let you talk about it. But I remember just as a random person in Atlanta thinking, wow, I think it's so incredible that someone with that significant of a position really chose family, chose career too, because of course there were things that you were going to go on to do. But to speak about it, you and I talked about this the first time we met. I just thought that was so powerful and so incredible. There are many different things that make a life whole, complete, significant. And the way that you all have prioritized your family, I think, is just so beautiful. So I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Well, thank you for saying that. It was hard. It was not just like kind of, okay, this is a difficult decision. What do I do with, about this next role? I mean, it was gut wrenching. I truly loved what I was doing and felt like I actually felt like I'd reached this point in life where it was all just sort of working. It was humming. I was loving what I was doing.
And humming as a CFO, nonetheless.
I'm so weird. And I felt like I was right where God wanted me. And like the kids were great and Billy was great and life was sort of all working. That's right. It's always right when you're like, don't think that, right? It's
a little too comfortable.
Yeah, it's a little too comfortable. And bringing this merger together, it's a whole nother talk, was, just an unbelievable career opportunity, but also a very difficult thing to do because mergers are tough, and bringing two companies and their histories and their legacies and their names and their brands together and kind of wiping the slate clean and saying, okay, we're going to create new out of this, and we're going to move headquarters and change the name. And everybody has their opinions about all of this, but it's hard stuff, if you believe it's the right thing to do. And in that, there became this sort of crossroads for me where it was, hey, we want you to come to Charlotte and do this. And we had a big decision to make. And at first it was like, of course, I say yes. This is what I've done. Every 18 months, I say yes, right? This is what we do. And I'm a good soldier, and we're going to do this. And the more we got into it, and Billy and I just prayed and prayed and prayed over it, I just kept saying, it doesn't feel right. I don't know why, but we're called to be here. We're both here. We're both from here. We have lots of parents here, siblings here, nieces, nephews. We have a big, wonderful life. We love our church. We love our community. We love our friends and family. And I love this city. Like, I really love this city. I don't know why people say it's weird. I mean, just it's not because the city's weird. The city's amazing. But because people aren't really hometown people anymore, especially in a big city like Atlanta.
Yeah.
But I think this city's incredible. And it is, our history is bookended. It's not really bookended because it's still unfolding, but you've got the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and everything that's occurred in between and since. And it is still unfolding in such a powerful way.
Yeah.
And
important work
to be done here. And I just felt like he wants us here. And I don't know how or why, and I can't believe I'm walking away from something that, again, on paper looks amazing. And like, yes, you would do that. You just move. I mean, I can't tell you how many people were like, you just move. Like, you just move. This, I don't even get it. And I was like, I can't explain it. We need to be here.
Yeah.
So it was gut-wrenching, hardest decision I've ever made, no question. And like I've never cried at work. I had a lot of tears at work. Like, I can't do this, but I know I have to do this.
Yeah.
And so here we are, and it actually, opens up all these other doors for me to think about how I could take my career in the next step. And I'm loving what I'm doing now. I wish I was doing it in office, and I joined on March 10th, which is the hardest time to join a new company. So I've been doing it at home for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's a hard way after being sort of a lifer at one place to integrate into a brand new, large global organization where you just don't have that bank account of relationships. And so I don't have that to draw on. So I'm just rebuilding every day. But we're here, and I think we're here for a reason. And I think, that's still unfolding. And we don't understand God's timing when we're in it. It always looks perfect when we look back, but when we're in it, it's a mystery. And
it's so hard to see.
It is hard to see, but I will say I got to take a few months off. We went to New Zealand. We spent 5 weeks traveling over the winter. We pulled our kids out of school. We thought that was crazy. Turns out there was no school to come back to. So turns out it was perfect.
Worked pretty well for them.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That endless summer of fun just really continued on for a couple years, it sounds like, in some ways.
It did, actually. And I went from not having the time I wanted with my family more often than not to having a lot of time with my family this past year. But it's been an incredible blessing. And I know my sons, in a way, I haven't known them before. And I think, again, there's a reason we're here and we've made these decisions. And we're just kind of living our life with open hands right now of just, you called us to the city. It's a city that's kind of hurting, I think, in a lot of ways. A lot of cities are right now. And use us.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, to give you another chance to quote some scripture, you picked out an incredible verse that you said has really been central for you in 2020. And then, as you might imagine, we have a bunch of different questions that are popping up, and I see them all. They're all great. So we're going to try to get to as many of them as we can. But tell us a little bit about that verse.
Okay. Well, so one, I would say, and you and I talked about this a few months ago. I heard one wise pastor say that 2020 has revealed that we have made an idol out of certainty.
I can't tell you how many people I've gone on to quote you with that too. So attribution to the pastor, but also you.
I mean, it's true.
It's true.
Right? I think it's revealed that for all of us, like we value certainty, with the certainty of what am I going to do tomorrow? Where will I be? What does my schedule look like this weekend? Where will I be on Friday night? And all that's been destabilized since March, when everything was just this kind of rolling series of cancellations. And 6 months into it, I don't think any of us are going to say we're thriving in this, right? We're kind of surviving, but we're maybe not thriving. And I think, again, it brings us back to this idea that God's kind of taking us sideways, so we really fully understand the sufficiency of his grace. And the fact that that certainty was never real. It was always an idol. I also had heard another wise pastor. You can watch a lot of sermons these days. It's pretty awesome.
It really is.
Say this weekend, the object of your trust has to be able to handle the weight of your circumstances. So the object of your trust has to be able to handle the weight of your circumstances. And when you think about it, there is nothing that can handle the weight of our circumstances except for Jesus. And so, yes, my mantra verse of 2020, and it was on my heart before March, and then in March I just kept going back to it over and over again, is John 16:33. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. And I just love it. I've told you these things so that in me, not in anything else, but in me, you will have peace. And in this world you will have trouble. It is guaranteed. But take heart, exclamation point. I love an exclamation point in the Bible. You don't get a lot of them. Take heart. I've overcome the world. It's done. It's finished.
Yeah.
He's on his throne. He was on his throne yesterday. He's on his throne today. He will be on his throne tomorrow. I've overcome the world.
Yeah. It's so good. Oh, I love it. All right. Well, let's dig into some of these questions. So these are all, please send your questions in as you have them. I think they're being collected on Instagram. And no one's telling me no, so I'm positive that that's right now. All right, so how do you approach making really big decisions? And what does it look like to really discern? Just start off with a super easy one. This one's actually a 2-part question, so I'll read the second part, but then dissect it as much as you'd like. As you prayed about and tried to discern specific decisions, such as your potential move to Charlotte, how did you hear God? Through quiet time, individual time, conversation? what did that discernment process and decision making look like?
It's so hard. I mean, it is the hardest. That is the hardest question and the hardest thing to answer, and one I really struggled with. And when I was in it, and I was working so hard too, and I was tired and stressed. And Billy would always say, just, you need to pray over it. You need to pray over it. I mean, I was to the point where I'm like, I can't even pray. Like, I can't, my brain.
Can't think.
I can't
do it.
quiet it. I can't stop it. I can't turn it off. It was such a struggle. I mean, he prayed over me more than I could pray for myself. I just could not get myself focused.
Yeah.
It was like such a whir and I can't really think of many other seasons in life where it's been that complicated for me to try to discern something that looked totally equal and, choice A or choice B. I wasn't going to go wrong. There was so much to be gained and so much to be lost with each choice. And, people would say, write your little columns down, your pluses and your minuses.
I love the columns.
Like, they're balanced. I don't know. I can't, that doesn't work either. You have to quiet your mind. You have to get centered and focused. You have to open the Bible. You have to pray over Scripture.
Yeah.
It was hard for me, and I didn't feel great about how I was trying to lead myself through that. I find often I wake up in the middle of the night. That might be something that happens more in your 40s than in your 20s. I'm just saying.
Something to look forward to?
Yeah. We're not. But that's where God meets me. I mean, I open my eyes and it's like, this is the time to pray.
Yeah.
And I'm centered and I'm quiet and there isn't noise and there's nowhere I need to be but laying right there. And I actually find now I can get really focused and connected with him. And I actually think he meets me in the night. And maybe that sounds really weird, but I just think that that's where
there's so much evidence for that. That's amazing.
That's where he knows, I don't think my eyes open on accident. I think it's just like,
Absolutely.
This is the time. And so the only wise answer I have is just pray and read Scripture and ask people to pray for you. Don't do it yourself, all yourself.
Yeah.
And it was hard because in the beginning, the merger was not known. It wasn't public. I couldn't tell anyone. The only person who knew was my husband. And it was like, how do we make this life decision all by ourselves? And then we had some time when it was, and the number of people who would just text me out of the blue and say, I'm praying for you. And they didn't know that this decision was on my heart.
Wow.
There was no way because it was not known at that point. And it was pretty powerful, I have to say.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Good. I love that. Well, this one is a bit of a swerve, but I think you're going to really like this question because I've heard you talk about this some, so I'm glad it was asked. What are some tips to compete and lead in such a male-dominated industry?
So don't focus so much on the fact that you're not male. Just be who you are. And it took me a few years to get comfortable with the fact that I didn't have to be one of the guys, that I could be uniquely me. And that didn't mean I couldn't be feminine or wear a dress or, the fun shoes. I mean, I wasn't going to try to wear the boring old suits. I was like, oh, so lucky I don't have to dress like that. And that's in a very formal environment. You wear ties and suits and I would always joke, like, I at least have necklaces I can wear. Something, like to bring your personality out. And as I got more comfortable and more mature, more confident in who I was, I realized that, expressing myself and being who I was and being vulnerable and letting that come through was actually an asset. Yeah. And I would say being a woman right now in business and even especially in male-dominated fields is such an asset. Like, don't miss the time you are alive in this world. I have been watching that PBS American Experience, the vote, and the suffrage movement, and it's just like, how was that only 100 years ago? This is crazy. I mean, we were not fit to vote. Here we are. I mean, we are all dying to get more women and people of color into leadership roles in every company, in every field, everywhere. This is our time.
Every table in every room.
Every table in every room. Don't be afraid of who you are. Embrace who you are. we are all finally starting to understand that diversity comes in so many different flavors and versions, and diversity of thought is what we're looking for. And you can only get diversity of thought with diversity of experiences. And our diversity of experiences are, we're a product of who we are, our gender, where we were raised, our ethnic background, our racial background, all of it, and own it. And and last but definitely not least, you do have to be the best. Like you do have to be really good at what you do, right? In all circumstances, do it for God's glory. And, going back to 1 Corinthians, remember why you're doing it and do it really well. Do it for his glory. And then your actions and your works will speak for themselves. And don't be overly focused on being a woman. And realize that you bring something to the table that people are looking for. They want it.
Yeah. That is amazing. Well, this speaks into that a little bit, but as an executive, a wife, a mother, a friend, plus a human being with personal needs and interests, how do you balance all of those roles, and how do you set boundaries?
Boundaries. Wow, that's a wise person who asked that.
Great question, whoever
Yes,
that was.
That was a great question.
That was Fraser's question. I would just want everyone to know. If you were here, you would see her pointing to herself, so we'll just bring the community to your living rooms.
Fraser, that was so good.
Great question, Fraser.
So it's hard to balance, and I guess I would say a couple of things. One, everybody struggles with balance. So this idea that balance is like a female challenge is crazy. Everybody struggles with balance. I see just as many men I work with struggle with balance. We all have other things in life besides work or family, and there are all choices that we're making. And so I think boundaries is the answer. You have to decide what matters, and you have to prioritize that and where you spend your time. And I'm a bit of a pleaser, and I get really excited about so many things. And my new assistant, who's only been working with me for 6 months, is like, wow, managing your calendar is hard. I was like, I know, I'm really sorry. If you could help me with boundaries, it would be really great. Like, help me with where I can say no to certain things, because I'm not very good at it.
For sure.
And it can get the best of me at times. So I do think you just have to be comfortable saying no. And I've gotten a lot more confident in saying no over the years of just, I love that, I respect that, but I just can't commit any more time.
Thankfully not to pour.
No, this was an easy yes, I told you.
I love that. Absolutely. I think that's so important. And there's such an art. I feel like I'm learning that as I get, a year older here and there. Every time it's saying no is really hard, but sometimes your no can be such a loving response to something, because if you can't give it your best effort or you can't fully dig in, then your yes would not be very helpful.
Yeah.
Your no would be better.
Yeah, they're all of those trite sayings, but they're really true of
Absolutely.
say yes to the very best, and whatever you're saying yes to means you're saying no to something else, and they're all true. And just remembering those things.
Absolutely. I think I really like this question, so want to ask this one of you, but you have titles and roles, and maybe there are assumptions about, you name it, any part of your life. And I really appreciate that this question was asked. How do you remain a strong follower of Christ and not necessarily give into or conform to maybe the roles that are assigned to you based on your job title or where you live or where you go to church, that sort of thing? How do you maintain that?
That's a hard one. It's a good question, because I think it is hard at times. Sometimes it's hard when you're in a big corporate environment. I don't know if this is where this question was going, but so I'm going to answer it this way. When
sure
you're in a
it'll be
big
great.
corporate environment and you have to make hard decisions all the time, and you have to make choices and trade-offs, and people are impacted in that, and you have to be kind of tough, especially if you want to create a performance culture. And that can feel sort of counter to being a Christian at times, of pushing people and pushing for more and driving hard and holding people accountable. It's not. It's not counter to our faith in any way.
Yeah.
And so it's adopting the right heart of grace and empathy and humility in how you lead. There are a lot of aspects of leadership that are a lot of fun, where it's natural to lead with grace and humility, and empathy and transparency and just connect with people. And then there are other aspects of it where you sort of have to be tough and you got to drag people along, and you have to hold people accountable for performance and for their choices, and you have to say no a lot too. And sometimes I think that can feel like, am I living my faith right now? And I think you just have to kind of pause sometimes and go, did that feel good, what I just said and what I just did? And do I feel like I was really living out my faith and how I made that choice or I led through that decision? And sometimes the answer is no. I didn't do it well. And I don't talk about my faith in a corporate environment. I've worked for public companies. I can't. I really don't. I mean, if you ask me, I'll tell you, but I don't wear it on my sleeve. And so I have to think about the fact that would somebody, when they tune into this talk, be like, wow, I never knew she was a Christian. That's kind of weird, right? That's possible that, you know, in that interaction they had with me, they're like, huh, that's great to hear, but I didn't get that. And it's just trying to figure out, how do you walk that very fine line in a big corporate environment? And I think it's a challenge, and I think it's one where you guys as a community, which is one of the reasons I love what you're trying to do, you can help each other and support each other, and what that looks like for those of you that are, you know, want to really find like-minded people as you pursue your careers. And that's not the only thing you're caring about at this age and stage in life, but most of us have to make a living somehow. And so you are trying to figure out, how do you marry those aspects of your life together?
Right. Or if you're in a season where you're at home, you're most likely walking with someone who is in that working world, and how do you encourage them in that?
Absolutely.
So I hope that that's heard loud and clear through your story too. Like, I love the bit that you shared about Billy praying over you when there was not the strength there to be able to pray for yourself.
Yeah.
Which I think is so special. It's important.
He's pretty amazing. But yeah, you have to, as women, as you're going through these seasons of life, you have to carry each other through.
Yeah.
I mean, my girlfriends have been my girlfriends for 25 years now, at least.
Well, very thankful for that one who dragged you out to dinner that one fateful night years ago.
She'll take a lot of credit for that. It was a setup. It was not.
Well, if you're watching, friends, we believe you. Well, I think we have 3 more quick questions. I'm being nudged to wrap it up, which is great because I could sit here and talk to you until tomorrow. What is it like being a woman at the executive table of a global corporation? Does it still feel like an uphill battle, even now that you have a seat? And what's your advice for getting to that table? And you've spoken to some of this, but...
Well, the weird thing is, the table is my ping pong table at home, where I have a stand-up desk right now. So literally,
that's the goal.
Physically see, I have 3 big screens around me on a stand-up desk on my ping pong table, because the kids claimed the dining room and the office when everything went on Zoom.
And you got the ping pong table.
So I got the ping pong table. So it looks like a really funny executive table.
That's a different one.
It is. It's different. That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, look, when I first was named CFO at SunTrust, and I'm finding myself in that boardroom and around that executive table, I definitely had a moment of that imposter syndrome that you hear about, of like, they made a huge mistake. I should not be here. Like, I am not ready for this. I'm not equipped. I mean, that first earnings call, I thought I was going to throw up right before.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it is like, that's a tough one. And so, yeah, it's hard. And then you just have to kind of go, I'm here for a reason. Somebody saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself. And it wasn't just one person. There were a lot of people who made a series of decisions that led to me being where I am. And all I can do is my best. And I will fail at some things. I will make mistakes. I will say the wrong thing. I will answer the question wrong. I will not lead in the way I wished I had led through that decision. And I will have grace for myself, and I will pray that others will have grace for me, and then I will do better tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's no different than how you should approach your very first job on your very first day out of college. It doesn't change no matter what your title is,
your work
where
ethic,
you sit.
authenticity.
Yeah. You just
embracing yourself.
Yeah. And just do your very best to lead, and to give your best. And I really did write this and put it at my desk in the very beginning of my career, and I pulled it out when I was leaving SunTrust, and I was like, I wrote, give more than you get, leave more than you take.
Wow.
And I think if we all
That's
approach what we do in our jobs, in our families, in our lives, in our friendships, give more than you get, leave more than you take.
Yeah. What a good way to think about
It works.
how to round out this year.
Yeah.
I really like that a lot. This one may make you laugh a little bit because I have no idea how you're going to answer this question, but what does a day in your shoes look like? How do you connect to God daily in such a demanding job?
My shoes start to look like flip-flops in the last 6 months since, like everybody else.
At the ping pong table.
They only see me from the waist up. So I have a standing mat and I'm barefoot a lot too. I got that core mat. That's my exercise. What does a day look like? I mean, I start around 7. I try not to start meetings until 7:30 or 8, but I'm there. I'm totally working away by 7. I'm in a groove now where my husband gets the boys up and feeds them and takes them to school, so that's kind of awesome. That season has not always looked like this season has not always looked like that, so that actually
Holding on to that.
changes my mornings a lot. Right now, it's like a lot of people. I'm on Zoom for 10, 12 hours straight, and it's hard.
Yeah.
And I really miss connecting with people. Before all this, it was a schedule that looks booked out for, especially, I can only speak to SunTrust before I left, since I've started at Invesco in this crazy time. My schedule would look booked for 30 days out. I mean, and then I could pretty much look maybe 5, 6, 8 months out, and I would only have maybe 30% of my hours that would be free if you looked at my calendar. I mean, it was just meetings booked for months and months and months in advance. And so travel calendar, I mean, it was like, I can take a vacation that 1 week of the year that lines up with my kids' school vacations.
A lot of certainty.
Yeah, there's a lot of certainty of like, that's our week, we're going to grab it, don't take it.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable leading life that way. It's not for everyone. And I know that sounds horrible to some people. It's fine with us. There are sacrifices in it, and you give up a lot of autonomy over your life. But I also feel like I get to give to an organization and to people in ways that I get so much back from it.
Yeah.
I truly love it. So it's just highly scheduled, I guess, is the answer to that.
So filled to the brim might be a good answer to that. But then you still have such a deep and profound faith. So you make time for the Lord, and I know you all are really involved at your church. How does it look to fit that in? Is it just a part of every moment that you walk through each day? Do you try to carve specific space out to spend time in your Bible, to listen to a sermon? What does that look like?
Billy's so much better at the quiet time every day. Like, it is just, talk about structured. He's not structured in any other way, but there he is. So it's the best way to be structured, I guess. For me, like I said, it's a lot of middle of the night. I've gotten into a really good routine where I do start every morning kind of 10 minutes with a scripture and just praying. I mean, I have my YouVersion scripture of the day, verse of the day, and I have it set to send to me at 5 a.m. So when my alarm goes off, I grab the phone, and before I get out of bed, I read the verse, and I actually just pray over that before my feet hit the floor.
Oh, I love that.
And it's been a real game changer, actually.
That's amazing.
Kind of how I get my day sort of focused in the right way. And then church is a priority. Back when we could get up and go and actually get dressed, I look forward to not being in my pajamas for church. I miss it so much. I will say corporate worship for me is, it's just powerful. And I am yearning for it. I mean, it does feel like a real big hole in my heart right now, because I just love it. And I look forward to being back. And there are a lot of things that, we all miss in this crazy season. For me, that's number one.
Yeah. I agree. You're not alone. That is, I think, definitely one a lot of us are craving.
Yep.
So one last question to wrap it up. We, as a community of women in their 20s and 30s, knowing we've got all different kinds of jobs, seasons of being at home, maybe with little ones, maybe with pets, whatever it looks like, lots of different life stages. What advice would you give, or where might you encourage us as women to plug in Atlanta?
That's a great one. You know, I can remember in my 20s in the wilderness years, like I called it, and I would pray all the time, like, God, I've got so much, like, just use me. Like, I feel like I have all this sort of time and energy, and I don't know where to plug in. Like, use me. I don't know where to go or what that looks like. And then I remember a few years ago being like, okay, good.
Got plenty going on
I'm
now.
good. Like, answered prayer, over answered. It's so strange. I don't know what the tipping point was and all of that. I don't know how it happens, but I would say find what you love. There are so many amazing organizations. They need your mind. That's what I tell people often. Like they need whatever your gift is, whether it's interior design or finance or graphic design, or just you love to serve and you have a heart to just serve and roll up your sleeves. And that way, whatever it looks like, there are organizations that need you. I love, one of my former colleagues called all the nonprofits I'm involved in, he called them my hobbies. And I was like, you know what? Sure, I'll call it my hobbies because it's true. If I'm not working or with my family, that's exactly what I love to be doing. I love Junior Achievement of Georgia. I love the Atlanta History Center. I love Children's Healthcare. I love AYA. I love all these organizations.
So many.
I get excited about their mission. I get excited about what they're trying to do and the ways in which they are serving the many needs in our community.
Right.
And there are so many needs. And so find the need that's on your heart. You know, what do you get excited and passionate about? And just go call them and say, how can I help? They'll pull you in, and you'll meet great people too. And I just, I would encourage you, don't wait for someone to find you. Go figure out what you're passionate about and just walk in the door, pick up the phone, see how you can help. We all need help, and especially right now.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, still many more questions, but love those. Think it's such a great way to end. And I just can't thank you enough for being here with us. It was such a blessing. I'm sure everyone is rejoicing and clapping and excited at home too. I know we've got a tiny little audience here who's so excited.
Well, thank you for having me. I have said, all of you have been, you're a blessing in my life. And it's weird to be the older mentor.
Only by a little bit.
Only by a tiny bit. But I love being around all of you and just hearing about your own journeys. And I think what you're doing, and that so many people are maybe tuning in and creating community in your own home around, this, I think is just amazing. And so I would encourage all of you, just keep going. You're planting seeds in your life as women of faith that are just incredible, and it will bear fruit.
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All for watching. I don't know what else to say, but we're so glad you were here. Oh, yes. See you in December. December 8th, we'll be back for our fourth and final pour of 2020, and it's going to be great. And we may or may not have another different backdrop. As you might have noticed, we've had 3 different scenes for all 3 of our pours. So we'll see if we keep that up or do something similar. But thank you to Allison. Thank you to all of you. We love you. We'll see you soon.